Look, these bits are coming out. And we're live. Oh, we're live. Welcome to Agencyphonics episode 21. And there's me trying to control my hair, which is, I was just explaining, has turned into Doc Brown from Back to the Future. So welcome to Agencyphonics. We've made it to episode 21. I was just saying it's my lucky number 21, so I'm expecting lots today from this episode. I'm here with Pete as always. Morning, Pete.
Hi.
And our special guest today is Sabrina Chevannes, who I had the great pleasure recently of inviting her to come and do a Pecha talk in our brand new agency community that we set up about 8 weeks ago now. And Sabrina, you are one of the 600 plus members that have signed up already, which is really exciting. And yeah, I asked you to do a Pecha on all of the challenges that you'd had and lessons you'd learned from your agency. And we were just joking because out of the 12 people that spoke, you actually told us all of your challenges and all of the things you'd overcome and lessons learned. And everybody else just gloated about all the awards they'd won. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, I thought the brief said to come up with mistakes that you've done and lessons you've learned from your agency life, but everyone was sort of all the fantastic things I've achieved, and I think I was 10th or something. So I was sitting there listening to everyone. I was like, this is all so positive and they've done so well, and here's me listing all the mistakes I've done through my agency career. It's going to be the complete opposite. So
yeah, I know, but the fact that you shared all those is why you're here today, because actually I sent you a message afterwards saying how much I really enjoyed your talk, because Pete and I, we spend our lives, I guess, our full-time job these days is going into agencies and sharing all of the mistakes that we made with people in a way that they then won't make them. And so actually, when you shared all the lessons that you'd learned, first of all, I was really impressed that you'd somehow managed to overcome most of them. And the other thing is that you seem to have actually grasped and learned the lesson on each one. Because a lot of people, Pete and I will tell you, they make mistakes and then they think they've learnt the answer, or maybe they kind of sort of convince themselves they know the answer, but they haven't, and then they still repeat the same things over and over again. So look, I wanted to I do the best way to do it, but I mean, you've literally just started again, from scratch, because what you've decided, which is a really incredibly brave thing to do, is because of all of the lessons and mistakes you've learned, you decided, now you've learned everything, you want a fresh start and you're going to start all over again.
Yeah, definitely.
That's a great thing.
It is brave. It's like when people say to you, would you start life again knowing everything you've ever learned now? Most people say yes, because obviously you can win at life with all that extra knowledge. So that's how I kind of felt, struggling. Loads of these problems happened. I had the choice of either keep fighting through all these problems or just press the reset button.
Yeah.
And most people thought I was crazy. The majority of people told me not to do it, just because, rebranding, starting from scratch, redoing your whole entire online presence, which I've had for 6 years or whatever, is just kind of crazy, and starting again. But then it removes all the negativity from that old brand and all the bad stuff, rather than keep fighting against it. You've got a clean slate to kind of work against, which I thought was really important, and it was inspiring to kind of take this brand now forward and the kind of anything possible.
And so we're going to go all the way back, and we're going to talk about that whole story, because I think you have a wonderful story. But in particular, the thing that we sort of touched on before when we spoke was that sometimes there isn't, like you said about people advising you, not to start again. And a lot of there has been a lot of talk in the UK over the years, there being more stigma. Like in America, it's almost, it's sort of, you can't be successful unless you failed in business a few times, whereas over here, there's a little bit more stigma around failure and more judgment. Would you say that's still the case today, or do you think it's not, have you had experience of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like in the UK, I don't know why it is though. In the UK, it's sort of like, oh, if you failed at something, that's a very big negative. It's like, oh my God, you failed, you're a disaster. Whereas in the US, they kind of embrace that. They take it on board. They're like, right, okay, what have you learned from it? I think that's great attitude. Over here, I feel like it's the opposite. And And I know that Richard Branson's quite a famous one for, obviously he's been like bankrupt 4 times or something. And if you read his if you read his biographies, he's like been in jail, he's failed at loads of businesses, like, you know, and I think that when people heard about that, they were sort of like, oh my God, did you hear about this? Like it was kind of, and it's almost this like Schadenfreude as well, where they're sort of like, oh great, this guy who's super successful at the top has actually, you know, been a disaster at some point, and they kind of benefit from it. But I felt that you've got to kind of embrace those mistakes that you make, otherwise you're never going to learn from them, you're never going to grow. So I'm not really that ashamed to say that I've made a mistake, because I kind of jumped into it with no help and with no, like, you know, support. So I was bound to make mistakes along the way.
And I think the reality is in life anyway, is that most people, you know, most people have more things go wrong than go right. I mean, you never meet people, even when people would say they're really lucky, you know, I think I'm a lucky person, but I've definitely had more things go wrong than right in my life, you know, all the way through. And if I even do a talk called The Unlucky Millionaire, where I literally explain how everything all my life went against me, every single stage. And sometimes the biggest successes come one step after the point of failure, you know. And Pete and I, we never talk about this, but we had a failed business, didn't we, Pete?
Yeah, we did. Yeah,
we thought
Which one?
There's only one. Is that what I can think of? But no, we when we in the early days of the internet, we were thinking about starting up one of the first, I guess, digital based recruitment agencies, because at the time there were a load of IT people doing recruitment and no one really got digital, and we tried to start something up, and we thought, oh, those recruitment companies, they make loads of money, this will be really, really easy. And it was like one of the hardest businesses you could ever do. And so whenever I meet a recruiter, I'm always like really respectful, because I don't, I mean, you have a recruitment story as well, Shelley, but it's always like the other way around for me. It was like, actually it's quite tough, you know, because you can find a candidate and somebody, they can take a job with someone directly or another agency, you know, so that you never get, you think, oh, they make really big fees, but actually they lose so many opportunities. So you try things and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, sometimes you learn lessons and you go ahead and do it better. But I want to start by saying I wish you all the best of luck for this new part. And I think probably is the best time ever to start again, Sabrina, because everyone always says the best time to start a business is in a downturn, you know, because you start to tune into what is actually working, what post downturn. You're not stuck in a legacy business where you're right now, you know, maybe working with the airline industry or travel or a sector that's been affected by the downturn. You know, you now get to move forward and see where opportunity is. So let's go all the way back. Let's go all the way back to Sabrina and tell us your story, because I think life started out for you at a young age when you decided you were going to be a teacher.
Yeah, so when I was really young, I've always wanted to kind of do several different things, but teaching, and I wanted to be a teacher, a vet, a doctor, and a hairdresser. Those are the 4 professions I think I went through. I mean, like, of all of them, they're pretty good. I think the one that my parents were least proud of was the hairdresser choice, but I just thought it was really cool to be a hairdresser. But I think that's the creative side of me. So it's not so far off. Like, I still think it's a cool job. And then the vet, they quickly put me off that, because they started showing me that it's not just about taking care of fluffy animals and they're being all cute, but actually you do some quite gross stuff as a vet as well. So I was like, ew, I'm not doing that, and quickly changed my mind.
Especially ones wearing Liverpool football shirts in the background.
Hey.
Sorry.
He's my mascot. But yeah, he's fluffy and cute, so he's fine. But yeah, no, so then I didn't want to do that. And so it kind of left teaching and being a doctor. And I kind of almost pursued both of them in my career. So my brothers both went on to do medicine, and so I went off to medical school as well. But I'd always had this teaching kind of background. I'd done like tutoring for exams when I was at school and just helped people out. So when I got to medical school, I moved to London. I was from Birmingham originally. So I moved to London, and obviously it was super expensive compared to Birmingham. And as a broke student, like, you've got no money. So I was like, went out and tried to do private tutoring. It was great. I was getting like loads of money for the age of like 19. I was like, this is fantastic. And so sort of kind of scaled it into a bit of a business, and that's kind of how I started. really. It's that teaching thing. And I started off just kind of giving friends at university some extra students, and then like taking a cut on it. And I was like, didn't really care because I was making some money off them doing work. It's fantastic. And then I started to realize, actually, I could turn this into a business. So basically, that's what I decided to do. I took like my teaching and the private tutoring and turned it into a bit of like a teaching agency sort of thing. So yeah, that was my first business. And again, that's the mistakes that I learned. I didn't know how easy it was to start a business at the time. And I just thought, running your own business was this big thing that obviously only rich people could do. And I just didn't have a clue. And then I was like, online saw you could just, start your own company for £50 or whatever it was. I was like, this is super cool. So I did that. My first ever business, these mistakes, I didn't know that you had to file accounts or stuff like that. I just thought you sign up to a business and you've got a business. I didn't know there was loads of paperwork assigned, which was really stupid until the letters fining me came through the door. So,
and they know how to send letters, the HMRC, don't they?
They definitely do. And they're damn scary, those letters. So,
yeah, they are.
I would...
they're not scary to Pete, but they're scary to entrepreneurs like who aren't financially based. So if I get them, I go, Pete, I got a letter from HMRC. I don't want to open it.
You just see the logo and shit yourself, don't you? It might be a refund, but
because they never make any sense. The emails, they're not spoken in like layman's terms, are they? They're just always complicated. There's always amounts of money you have to pay. You don't know why. Sorry.
It keeps accountants in work, so it's all good.
Yeah, very true.
It's true. Well, that's it. I think I didn't really know things about accountants or anything back then. I think I was just kind of dove in. I was like, this is really cool. I've got a business sort of thing. But obviously, when you start up a new company, you need a new website. And I wanted to do things properly, do my own marketing. Always had the design background, so that was great. And then so I designed something, but I didn't know how to put it online. So I started like looking online for developers and things like that. And I tried to hire a bunch of people. I went through like 3 or 4 and they all sucked basically. So I was getting really, really frustrated with it that at some point I decided to literally go on Amazon and buy HTML and CSS for Dummies and bought that book.
So can I just say to you that I also owned that book. I started in 1999 and I bought a book, HTML4 it was called, for Dummies, because there wasn't a huge amount of web. I mean, joking aside, you couldn't really learn much about the internet actually back then without buying a book anyway. Yeah. But so actually those books aren't as bad as they maybe sound, are they? Right? They're quite useful.
I thought they were great. Well, this is how I got into it. I literally read the book cover to cover, and I went and just got notes and did all the practice things inside it on my notes, and then launched that in a web browser to see how it looked. It was this kind of slow.
That's funny. Yeah.
That's what I did. Obviously now it's amazing. You've got all these like MOOCs and stuff, and digital courses, and you could just learn things online, instant results. They're fantastic. If I had that back in the day, I would love it. But it was literally for Dummies book, and read that, slowly practicing, and it was cool though. It was I found it really fascinating to see kind of my the little things that you type in and suddenly produce results. I thought it was amazing. So I learned that and took my design and then converted that into a HTML website. And I launched it and everyone was sort of like, this is really cool. Everyone thought it was really good. I got loads of good comments. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. I didn't think it was going to be that good, but people loved it. And I think other people in the industry just weren't that good. So I think that obviously it was easy to kind of make an impression, and then suddenly people started asking me to help them out with their websites and stuff like that. So I started doing a few friends and families, and then realized I was quite good at it. So I decided to sort of do it and become like a freelancer and see if I could make some money from it. But obviously it's that difficult thing at the beginning when you've got no experience and you're trying to start out somewhere, and how do you win a job when you've got no experience? And so I basically started off charging £75 per website.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. Wow.
That was it. But I was still learning. So and they were like, well, why are you so low? And I was like, well, actually, I was really honest. I was like, well, I'm actually just starting out. Here's some stuff I've done for friends and family, so you can see what the end result is. But because I'm learning, I'm going to be a bit slow, so you just got to bear with me. So you're going to take a few weeks to do it, as opposed to, a much quicker time. But you are getting it for only £75. So if you're not in a rush, it's a great thing. So I always believe in that, the cost, quality, time triangle.
Yes.
I believe in that. It's so true. And they got good quality, but they took ages, but it was dead cheap. And it was like, so it's kind of, you can only get two of the things on their max. But yeah, it was like that. So I started doing that, and I built up a bit of a portfolio. I was on these like freelancer websites. I was doing them all there and getting loads of little £75 websites, and gradually increased it, £100, 150, got it to like 300 was my kind of regular mark for a while for a website, £300. But then I was eventually I got quick at it. So I was doing a few of them, so it was actually mounted up, so I think it got to the point where I think I had too many of them. I couldn't handle the workload, and that's when I realised I wanted to have some other people to support me. I ended up...
During that stage, know what an agency was, would you say?
No. I mean, I feel like I'm only just at a stage where I just about know what an agency is. I mean, like...
So I always joke. There was a point where someone walked into... I'm pretty sure I was in a converted barn with about 8 people, and someone walked in and went, "Hey, I really like your agency." And I was like, what the fuck is an agency? I'm a company building websites. Like, I haven't got a clue what an agency is. But actually, once someone said that to me, I then started looking into it more, and I realized that there was a model, that there was a formula I could follow. So, but I'm always curious to know how people, because I think half the people who start, we wrote this in the book, half the people, we ran a poll in the community recently, and it was almost right. It was almost 50-50 again, Pete.
Yeah.
So half the people who start an agency, this is where you're coming to next in your story, but half the people who start an agency have had an agency background, and half of tend to be more entrepreneurial and maybe have found a problem they think they can solve, but it happens to end up going into that. And I was set like you, by the way. I was £225, I think, my first website, and it was like £25 an hour, which is funny. When my last website I built was $1 million, and it was 1,200 a day. So there was worlds apart, right? So, but I'm always curious though. So you didn't come from that agency background. It sounds like, I mean everything. You could have been a doctor, a teacher, and in fact you could have been an actress as well. I remember seeing on your LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, so I did. I was Lambda trained, so that's, for those who don't know, that's the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art. So I did that. And so, I've always kind of dabbled in acting. I've never wanted to do it seriously, but I've always done like a few acting jobs here and there. I did. I could have been doing that, medical school, did like teaching agency. I was doing a million different things, but somehow I just ended up on this creative path, which is bizarre. But I guess I've always been like that. I've always been, when I was very young, I did like the Young Business Entrepreneur of the Year award. I won that when I was like 16. So I always had spirit in me. And again, that was for something creative. We were making handmade greetings cards, so stuff like that. So it's always something creative side of me was always coming out. So I guess that it was inevitable I landed on this path. Just
as well you weren't a doctor then or a vet, because maybe too much creativity. Someone comes in for a facelift and you go, "I've done this.
I've had a tail for you."
Yeah, probably, definitely wise. Actually.
Yeah.
So do you just one thing I'd like to ask you before we go on is, do you think that because it's interesting, I find that with agency owners, some people are absolutely terrified of speaking in public, and I would imagine that because you had that sort of foundation in stage training, it must really help you today with when you have to speak, maybe even network, all of those things. I mean, it's probably a bit of an obvious thing to me to say that, but I often think there must be quite good for people to go back and almost do more stage work or do amateur dramatics, or to try and overcome a fear, really, or to help you to learn to speak better. But it must really help. You must have learned a lot from there that you still use today.
Yeah, I think that I've always been natural at it anyway, which is why my parents sort of said, "Do you want to go do this?" But I think there are different things I've learned. At the time, I didn't like it. So I liked acting. So I was always like a lead in plays and school plays and stuff like that. But the actual, official training, which then I had to go on, I didn't enjoy. I was like, this is rubbish. This is boring,
Sorry, Pete.
What did you say, Pete?
Dummies book for acting. Dummies for acting. That's what you need.
Yeah, I should have got that. But no, I didn't like that bit. But now looking back at it, like I'm obviously really thankful that my parents kind of got me into that and did that because I don't have any problems getting up on stage or speaking.
Yeah.
I have no problems with that. And I know that's one of the people's biggest fears.
How did your parents feel about you going down that path of, because it sounds like they had you in drama school, obviously you were there to be either a teacher or a doctor. Did they, when you're suddenly now building websites, being entrepreneurial, was that all cool, or were they having a meltdown at that stage?
I mean, they still don't understand what I do, honestly.
Brilliant.
Like, my family is so traditional. So I've got two older brothers and they're both doctors. So I guess they kind of, although they did warn me, they said that they didn't think it was going to be for me. But I was like, no, I'm going to copy what they do. They're my older brothers. I want to be a doctor too. So off I went to medical school. But no, I think they probably realised it wasn't for me. They are hugely supportive. So don't get me wrong. They're always, right? And like, I'm so grateful for that. But they still don't get what I do. Like no one in the family is entrepreneurial. No one runs a business or anything like that. Like, and I mean, extended family. Yeah. Everyone's in a traditional job. So like, they don't quite get what I do. Yeah. I don't think anyone in my family quite get what I do, to be honest. They just,
if you look at, there's, I don't know if you've ever come across Myers-Briggs personality tests. And if you look at, there's actually one that Pete and I use. Actually, we use it quite a lot in the community. It's quite interesting. We are. Did you see it at all in there? The test that we have it's called 16 personalities. We'll put it in the show notes. Oh. And anyway, what's very interesting is, and now I say this to you, it's gonna click, which is there is a very close connection between actors, entrepreneurs and politicians. Actually, the personality types are very, very similar. So for example, like there's a lot of actors, as you know now, that run businesses. I mean, you've got the Ryan Reynolds. I mean, I could probably think of loads of them, but it's like Oprah Winfrey's another great example, right? You've got people who are they've got that, they're actors, they're theatrical, they've got, but they're also entrepreneurs, very similar. So I think it's called The Star. Oh no, it's not called The Star. I can't remember the name of it now, but you should definitely take that test and see, because the fact that you did the whole, the whole stage side of things and learning to act, an actress you are, so that and entrepreneurialism is very, very close. It's quite, and not all entrepreneurs, of course, are like that, but it's what I call the kind of classic entrepreneurial character who and as you really describe a lot as well, which is you do lots of different things, and I think most entrepreneurs are very good at having lots of ideas and doing lots of different areas. So so I'd love you to, I bet you when you take it, you come out as that actor-actress personality, which sits next to the entrepreneur one, or you may well be the entrepreneur one, but we should definitely see that. It'd be great to know. So you're at the stage now where you've so you're so busy, you're having to take somebody on, right? I think.
Yeah, exactly. So I decided to take people on, and I just sort of went on, again, the freelancer websites that I was on, I just decided to have a look at other freelancers to see how they would work with me, because obviously that was cost effective. And then I went through a whole kind of freelancer journey, which was painful. I mean, that I've dabbled in and out of that for years. And I know that my experience contradicts a lot of people's experience with freelancers. Because I think at some point then I decided to embark on making it into a company. So I decided to create London Creative Designs as a brand, and I thought this is going to be much better to operate under this brand rather than just Sabrina Chevannes, the freelancer. So I did that, but then still needed to hire people. But at the very beginning, you can't afford to just sort of go into, getting full-time staff, get an office and that stuff. So I started off just getting freelancers. But I've had terrible experience with freelancers. But so many people I see, especially in the community or, wherever, they said that freelancers are the way forward. They're cost-effective, they're fantastic. Yeah. Flexible. I actually think they're the biggest nightmare I've ever had. I actually do. Like, we now have basically a zero outsourcing policy in our company.
Yeah.
Because of all the bad experience I've had. And I just think that, they just have, for me personally,
yeah, so that's a really interesting point, and especially in a world now post-COVID where we're talking about, maybe people building much more distributed teams, using more, contractors and freelancers, and I like you, by the way, when we had our agency, especially because we were doing website design development, I found that the more I had an in-house team of people that were a culture fit, that shared our values, that all basically, we were a good unit, that worked really well. But whenever I brought freelancers in, Pete will tell you, it always ended in tears. Like I used to call them mercenaries.
I think of one particular example where we ended up getting 2 freelancers in, where the client sued us because they weren't happy with the work. We then sued the freelancers, and then they sued us back for not paying. So we had this 3-way legal fight going on for 6 months. It was
and it was like the only time we ever lost money was when we had freelancers sitting in our office, charging day rates, which were really almost a bit upsetting to the people in the team, because you've got people in the team earning good salaries. I don't know, if you took a salary of, let's say, 45,000 a year, which is 900 a week, some of these guys were earning that in 2 days, right? And they were turning up at sort of 9 and going home at 5, and whereas the other guys would be there sometimes, not always, but sometimes they're helping us with pitches in the evening and things like that. So the world's changed a lot since then, I think. But I think there are ways to make. By the way, there are a lot of agencies out there that we know now that do work really well with freelancers, and I think you have to find a really good way to onboard them. And I know that one of my we talk about this business a lot up there everywhere, who's built a global team of basically of freelancers, 200 people worldwide, and he has said to me, I only bring people in who are recommended to me, like by people who I work. So he brings people in, then those people can bring other people in, but they have to recommend everyone in. And I think he says, for me, that recommendation, I tend to get good people from it. So I think some people do make it work. It's interesting that you haven't, and I genuinely, I'm with you a little bit. I'd much rather still to this day, even if you have a distributed team globally, I'd rather still have people that are kind of employed and work, and some people want that, right? So
yeah, I feel it's a different attitude. So from my experience, the freelancers have just been, I think because they can just go online and find the next job, they're less committed to your job, and they just didn't understand the concept of a deadline. And then it was the communication. So I started doing overseas ones because it was cheaper, and then obviously, and then I made it only UK, but even then, people with half an hour away from the office, but they still don't pick up the phone, still don't answer the emails. So how are you supposed to get in touch with them? And like you said, if you've got a client on the other end of the line who's annoyed and wants to know what's going on with the progress, and you have no idea, it's impossible to deal with, which is why having people in the office communicating is really important. So then I thought, okay, if I have them only in the office, I could still use freelancers and, contract them per project. I even had problems doing that. So I had a guy coming in. I was paying the guy 70 quid an hour, for his work. So it's a hefty amount of money to pay. But I found out, and I'm not a micromanager. I expect if work's going to get done, it gets done. That's all I care about. Meets the deadline, good quality. That's all. So I wasn't there analysing everything he did. I suddenly looked after I went and caught him at some point accidentally. He was actually outsourcing the work while sitting in my office, charging me £70 an hour to a guy in Bangladesh for $8 an hour.
Oh my gosh, really?
Absolute margins on that. It was insane.
Do you know though, actually so it's funny when we tell that story now, Pete, do you remember that we had a programmer that we recruited once who worked for us, who was on good money, he was a senior programmer, came in, what I'm talking about, the guy.
I do know how you're talking about.
And he used to work. He lived in. He kept turning up. Well, this is what happened. So by the way, I love that you've just triggered this memory off for Pete and I. So we had this guy work for us, and he seemed like a really good programmer. And at the time, we were working on the Subaru World Rally Team website, which was, was a really big project. In fact, we'd horrifically worked 10 nights through the night to get it delivered in time. And when I look back, I'm horrified at that. And I never asked anyone to work late. Like, everyone had volunteered. Everyone was really excited about the project, but the deadline was almost too much for us. Anyway, we'd come in the morning and he'd still be in the office. So, this is probably before we all got together and started working late. And we were like, in fact, in all the time he worked for us, he was always there first thing in the morning. And it appeared like he'd worked all night. It did turn out that partially he was sleeping in his car. We later found out round the corner. But what he was doing was his brother was a programmer in Ireland, and he was sending all of his work to his brother. His brother would then write all the code and then send it back to him. So not quite a freelancer, but we actually had a full-time programmer who was doing that too. Yeah. And it was just crazy.
So I went to fire him, and he raised a grievance against me because when the Subaru World Rally Team site went live, there was like some goodie bags, like coats, jackets would turn up, some pens and stuff. And he was the only one that can get a pen, so he raised a grievance.
Gosh, yeah, we're talking like it's quite 15, 16 years ago. That was, Pete. That's quite a while ago, huh? So anyway, so this is quite good because we've not really talked about this before. But I think that there are some very funny stories about people who work with you and your teams and stuff. So, but you've had some pretty tougher ones come along, and this is one of the main reasons for this podcast today is to hear about your main story, which I think is a really big lesson to be learned as well. And I think Pete in particular probably would like to know a bit more about what you'll do moving forward to protect against it. So what happened next in your agency journey then? So
yeah, I made a decision that in-house staff were the way to go.
Yep.
And I still believe in this. Still think are way more productive. Generally, if you're the type of person who, values a salaried job, because it's a whole different type of person to be able to run your own business and have, random money coming in. If you want solid salary, you're a different type of person. I believe in them. They're more loyal. So I've always believed in that. So I decided to do that. I had 3 people working for me because we've always been sort of full service. So I always needed like at least one developer, one designer, one marketer. So I had 3 people working for me full time. It was great. They were there. We were working great for about a year and a bit, so 15 months or something. Doing fantastic. I was going back and forth from the US quite a lot at the time because I had clients over there. I was doing various work over there. I was doing lots of talks, and it was fantastic, actually. I was doing quite a lot of stuff in America. I was basically moved over there for 2.5 years afterwards. So it was something.
Whereabouts did you go to?
In LA, Pasadena.
Oh, nice.
Yes, it was gorgeous. So ended up doing quite a lot of stuff over there. But before that, I was sort of, going back and forth quite a bit. What I didn't realise that during the times I was out there, and it's every agency owner's dream, right? To be able to run a business and have it just run without you, when you're not there. You don't have to be there every single day. And so I got to the point where I thought that was happening, whereas I could go to the US and not have to be involved in the day-to-day activities 24/7. But what I didn't realise was that whilst that was happening, they were like, oh, we don't need Sabrina. The 3 of them were bonding together in the office, and they'd made a plot to basically leave and create their own agency between themselves and take all my clients with them.
Oh, no.
So they were just basically all that time, prepping the client, saying, oh, Sabrina's not here, we don't need her, blah, blah. And they took basically all of my highest paying clients, and all the files, all license codes for software. It wasn't even that pathetic. And they just took everything and created their own agency.
Gosh.
And just it was.
So I heard you touch on this when I listened to your Pechacucha. And I think the obvious lesson here is around the contracts and stuff. So what we first of all, how did you even build up enough trust to hire people again after that?
I didn't for a while. Again, I kind of went back to just doing everything myself because I was just like, I'm quicker at it, better at it. I don't need these people. Let's just build up some money in the bank account. So I did that for a while. Again, burnt out because I was doing that so much, and it took some time. And I'm still sort of, I still obviously haven't fully. I mean, I the team I've got now, I absolutely love them. So that's fantastic. They're great. But when it comes to anyone now, my trust is still obviously a bit dubious because I just feel like anyone could screw you over at any time. That's just how you feel.
When you went to hire again, what was the thought process around, right, this is not going to happen to me again? What steps did you take to kind of protect yourself ongoing?
Yeah, so I did, contract-wise, so I obviously had like a non-compete clause in the contract which stated this, which a few people really questioned. And when they questioned it, it raised flags as well. So that's sort of something. But I sort of interviewed them with their personality in mind as well. So if they were the type that seemed a lot more loyal, you could see from their CV that they stayed with companies like for a longer period of time and, there was valid reason for them leaving, then they were probably a better candidate. The ones that kind of flitted about every 6 months from job to job, like were probably a little bit more, they probably took what they wanted out of one job and moved on to the other. And that's not what I want. I get that in London. That's what's super difficult, is that I feel like everyone's really hungry. And that's why I feel like it's much more difficult for staff retention in London than it is in most other cities, because everyone's kind of looking for that next big opportunity. You, as a small agency, I'm just a stepping stone on their career, which is horrible. But I'd love to have a loyal base. I'd love to have people. That's what I'm looking for. People to come who want to grow with the agency and stay, and they can grow in their career based on our agency growth too. Those are the people I'd want, but it's very difficult to find that. So I started then interviewing based on that sort of personality to see how they felt about that sort of thing. And the people with the same sort of vision and goals were the ones I wanted in my team, as opposed to those hungry people.
I think another thing, Sabrina, is quite interesting is geography. In London, it's well known that staff turnover in agencies is about 35%, whereas a lot of the agencies that we work with, who are maybe more on the south coast of the UK or just more regionally, a lot of those agencies have extremely low staff turnover. Like, people do come, they are loyal. Sometimes it can be a bit too loyal and a bit too much like lifers, but actually it's a lot easier, I think, outside London. And weirdly, because Pete and I always used to tell this story and it'd be interesting to see really how that changes actually post-COVID. But we used to have to tell a story, which was the people in our team that lived below. So we were in Hampshire, so we're just sort of probably about 50 miles south of Richmond, probably best way to explain it. And so people who lived south of our office, they were like the lifers. They were the people who were job for life. They'd come, they'd be loyal, they'd come and do a good job, they'd go home. They weren't, and this is very general stereotyping here, but actually it was pretty, like maybe 95%. They weren't that ambitious. It wasn't about, I don't know, pushing on, working really hard and driving. And then actually the people north of where we were, so going up towards London, they were all the people that were driven. So we had a really good balance in our team of people that were really driven and people that were really stable. And actually the two worked extremely well together. But when we go into some agencies in certain parts of the country, we can see how, like in London, everyone's very driven. They want to get a new job title every 6 months. They want to progress. They want to, like there's this kind of constant need to push forward. And probably because it's so damn expensive living there, as you said earlier on, people who actually need that just to eat out every night is like several hundred quid, whereas you never pay that much money anywhere else in the country. So I get that a little bit. I think it must be quite tough for you, especially being in London, because you're trying to retain people. There's lots of places they can go and work elsewhere. Whereas if you're based in, I don't know, I'm going to pick somewhere near where I live. Like if you're based in a little village in Harley Whitney in Hampshire, and you live there, and there's not really a lot of other places you can go and work, right? So you're gonna. So it's quite. Yeah, so I think you probably had it tougher in some ways. I think the geography, the ambition, those things, So it'd be interesting now how you're going to try and retain staff as well. But it doesn't matter so much, you rightly say. The investing in people, we used to be a big believer in. And, the philosophy there was And in fact, our friend who we interviewed, Hugh's got a quite a big agency down in Hammersmith. He said, I want people to leave me better trained than when they came in. I understand that everyone is going on a journey, and just for my part of the journey, I want them to get the best out of me and me to get the best out of them, and and work together on that. So. Yeah, but I'm with Pete's question. There's a lot of people talk about trusting your team and trusting the people who work for you, but when you've been betrayed, it must be sometimes quite hard to trust again.
Yeah. You had a listen to the Pechacucci. Did you have an incident with the accountant or a finance manager or somebody?
Yeah, I've had an incident with almost all my accountants. It's been horrible. I was having a conversation with someone the other day, and they were like, "I don't think there is a good accountant out there. They just don't exist."
Good accountant. But he doesn't do accountancy, unfortunately.
Yeah. No, I did. I read one of those Accounting for Dummies books.
I hear they're good.
They are good.
I think we should get some commission off the For Dummies series now. It's
Put the link in the show notes.
I was going to say, and just to let everyone know that we've just had a sponsorship email in. They're going to pay us £4 million a year to officially promote all their books.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Because it's how you kickstart your career. You read a For Dummies book and that's it, done.
I might celebrate with a glass of Laurent Perrier champagne then.
Looking for more sponsors. Sorry.
But
I'm going to get my drink out and say we will not bow to sponsorship.
Yeah.
But the accountant's side has been very, very difficult. I think that so many people I hear go, "Oh, I've got a good accountant," and then when I ask them what they do, they don't really do anything. So it's like, well, that depends on what you want from your accountant. At the very beginning, I found some decent ones. And then they just disappeared. I had one who was fantastic. He was great. It was just an individual though, but then obviously he couldn't take on too much work when it started to grow. So he just disappeared. Obviously, he just didn't think he could handle it. I had someone else as well, just failed to submit my tax returns and stuff like that. I kept getting fines, just a common thing. Again, another one I had, when I got a bit bigger, I started to hire a bigger firm. So I hired one, I was paying them every month a retainer, and they said when it came to the deadline, they emailed me 3 days before the deadline, because I was going, "What do you need from me? What do you need from me?" Weeks before, because I was well aware of it. And they were like, "Oh, we've got some software upgrade this month, so we don't have time to do your accounts." I'm like, "What?" And I'm like, "Are you joking?" It was just the way they just said it. We had to prioritise that, sorry. And I'm like, okay, so I've got some fine from HMRC, £750 or whatever it is. It's just a lot of money for being late for your accounts or whatever it is. And they just didn't really care.
No, it has to be fairly late to get to £750, by the way. That's like a year.
Oh, is it? Okay. Maybe I just didn't pay that, and then I got more fines. That's probably what happened. But it was, they just were, but the thing was, because it was the tax return, but also the VAT return, they told me that they didn't even realise I was VAT registered. That's what they came up with. And I was like,
"Oh, do you know?" But we had this week where and actually we still have to validate the story. But I'll pick it out generally. A lot of the time, Pete and I will go into an agency and we'll see they're registered for the wrong type of VAT. It's like they got the wrong. It's like we'll see so many simple, basic errors that happen. But I guess sometimes it is an attention to detail thing. When you've got lots of clients, they just sometimes miss the detail a little bit. But have you got someone good now?
Well, so
I hope that person's listening.
Well, the last accountants that we had were even my staff hate them because they just didn't pay my staff on time either, which was just ridiculous. It's the most basic thing. And then I found out that they, one of the other companies that I registered, they registered me because I said, "Oh, can you do that?" And they said, "Oh, yeah, we do that sort of thing, so it's fine." So I was like, "Okay, fine." They registered it, but gave themselves shares.
What?
Yeah. I found this out the other day when I was doing my annual return. I was like, "What?" They put themselves as a shareholder and gave themselves shares.
Oh my God.
So honestly, I was like, "What the hell?" So I saw my trust has gone out the window. So I've been spending ages trying to find a new account. And when all this was going on, I basically Went down Google. I even went to page 4 of Google.
I think here's where you're going wrong. I think you probably need to use your network to kind of find some trusted recommendations. Like, come to us. We'll find you a safe pair of hands to look after you. But maybe going through Google may not be the best way to find them, I would have thought.
But then that's the same with that's basically saying that SEO is pointless. You basically just said that.
Well, you know, but I think, you know, the reality is, as we wrote in the book, and I think if you're buying the service if you're buying a service from a service business, there are 2 reasons, you know, that really you should make that decision on. It's the trust and chemistry. So do I like you? Do I trust you? And then it's, do I believe you can do a good job? And so, you know, if you do choose a service from the internet, you still need to find out that they're trustworthy. You need to validate, you know, references, speaking to their customers, you know, almost mystery shopping them yourself. Sorry?
That's the problem. The last one came really highly recommended.
Right.
And lots of people
tell me I'm wrong.
They were great for the first 6 months, and then it just went. And basically, I think that when they started to grow, they didn't care about any of the smaller businesses, and that's what happened. And they were just awful. And so I finally found one recently. Like I said, generally, again, they start off quite well because they want your business, don't they? And I was basically spent the last few weeks talking to them, you know, and saying, oh, I'd love to engage you in our services, went through everything, made sure that it was very clear what I wanted them to do, expectations, just like we give a scope of work to people to say exactly what's involved. I basically did that with them to say, look, I want you to do this amount of bookkeeping, this amount of this. And they were like, yep, great. And then before said, oh, send her the paperwork, they actually sent me an invoice. So I was like, oh, so why have you sent me an invoice before we started work? And they go, oh, this is for the calls and emails up to date. So I was like, what? So, like, again,
that's how it works.
That trust has just disappeared.
We should do that in agency world, shouldn't we? Right. You've been on the phone talking to us about what you want. Yeah, we know what you want. We're sending you a bill.
Yeah, well, that's what they did. And I said, well, hang on a minute. I would have preferred if you told me this up front that was going to be the case. And also, these must have been really slow emails that you've been writing because it's a lot of hours.
Well, if it helps, I think Pete won't mind me saying, but Pete and I are planning to actually launch an agency accountancy firm probably in around 6 to 12 months time. So we're in the early stages of it. So we'll prospect for your business then, and we'll see if we can't.
And we're really honest. When we set companies up, we only say take 2%, not 10. We're the good guys.
Yeah, it'll be a safe pair of hands with us when we get it launched. We're going to try and create something a little bit more progressive for the new era. We're going to try and reinvent things a little bit from what you're saying isn't an uncommon story. Put it this way, you know. I think you know, we're quite lucky. A lot of the people we've kind of worked with over the years have been reasonably good, and there are some good guys out there, but I think there are fewer and far between sometimes. And you know, I think their business models are difficult too because they have to look after so many people. Yeah. And they all come in January when it's year end and want their tax returns done in 1 month when they can't. You know, it's like a massive bottleneck, and so they have their challenges too. But
I think transparency is really key. If they are struggling, you know, then just say, look, and you know, January is going to be obviously a crappy year for them, a crappy month for them. Just say, look, this is obviously a very difficult time. And
we find there's normally 1 or 2 very good people in these firms, and if they're looking after you, then actually then they do a good job. But if it then starts going down to the more junior people in the professional service firms, you kind of get a little bit the service drops a little bit. They miss a few things, don't they, Pete?
Yeah. I've had some classics over the years. This is a big firm. Just an example. Got sat in a review meeting, and the guy says, I saw PPC in the accounts and, you know, personal pension contribution. And the agency owner's like, no, that's our ad spend. No idea some of these. So there's loads of classics.
Love it when acronyms cross over. Yeah. That's really funny.
But yeah, so did you then take an accounting degree, did I hear?
Yeah.
You did what?
And overcome this.
No way. Oh, yes, you did say that in the talk.
I did law and accountancy as a joint degree because I was getting like so many people trying to screw me over legally fees or threatening to sue me. So I was like, I need to know what the law is on this.
That's brilliant. I've had loads of dodgy builders over the years. So I've just done a bricklaying course.
That's the solution for everything. Just like
so Sabrina, maybe we should go into business together then. Maybe we should set a business up together.
There you go.
We could call it complex accounting.
Yes.
For dummies.
Yeah. But yeah, I did that, and it actually helped because so many people threatened to sue for something stupid, because that was just I don't know. I feel like these American legal dramas just kind of make everyone be like, "I'll see you in court," kind of thing, and so everyone just threatened to sue, and then I'd be like, "Well, actually, no, because this is the law, this is the state of everything," and so I just knew exactly what to say and when I could be bullied and when I couldn't be bullied and stuff like that. So it was just, yeah.
But when you're angry, it does feel good to say, "I'm going to see you in court," and then.
So what's next for you? What's kind of like in your head, like your plan now for the future? What do you want? Do you have a vision in your future? Do you see how business for you will be in the next 3 to 5 years? Or do you live 1 month at a time?
Well, that's, I think, the problem of what I did before. So you say about, mistakes and stuff. I basically started again and created complex creative for that exact reason, is that I wanted to leave all the mistakes back in the other agency and then take only the good stuff in the new one. Yeah. So one of the things I think I did with London Creative is that I wasn't very good at planning, or I didn't do any analysis. And I think that a good accountant should really go through budgets and forecasts and stuff with you. You shouldn't really be down to doing that yourself. But it's something that I now need to do. For example, someone goes, "Oh, how much money is your company turning over?" I didn't even know the answer to that. That's how bad it was. I was that clueless. I just kind of plodded on, and as long as there was money in the bank to pay my employees, I didn't really care. So I didn't really pay attention to where all this money was. I was getting direct debits coming out every month for stuff I wasn't even using. I just wasn't paying attention. So basic stuff like that. So I think that going forward, it's a funny time because obviously I've started this basically smack in the middle of COVID. So it's very difficult to kind of predict what the market's going to be like and how things are going to pick up. But that's one thing I'm going to be doing a lot more of, is analysis on the business and actually planning, forecasting, budgeting, just knowing, not just monetary wise, but just also, analyzing clients. I think you guys with your stuff, where do your clients come from? I never even looked at that before. I just, most of them come to us. We've never really done any marketing, but how do they come to you? Which clients do they come from? And then obviously looking at how to nurture those leads more. And so, I'm just basically going to understand my business a lot more, because I feel like I just don't. Like you're saying, I've got so much.
It's funny because you come across to me obviously much more as that creative entrepreneur running a business, and I think that some people might be quite surprised at some of the things you said then about the lack of kind of awareness of your financials. But there's definitely two types of owner, in terms of there are those who are very controlling of the numbers and everything they have, and there are those who are more focused on the vision and where it's going to go, and as long as there's money in the bank, it's all okay. And actually it's when you can try and bring those two things together that it works. Because actually, if you know too much about the numbers and P and I have been in so many businesses where the owners hide behind a spreadsheet all day long and literally just they try to manage it from behind the scenes, and they just don't get anywhere. And there's always the odd one that has done really well doing that. There's always an exception, so I'm going to hedge a bit, but generally it can hold people back. And in your case, it's interesting you say that, because I guess for Pete and I often, I guess the first thing we do when we help agencies is we go in and we have a tool that we use basically that maps out the next 3 and 5 years, and we map it out and we show people what's achievable, what's realistic, what your team size would look like, how does the profit work, how do you build value in your business. Or if you don't want to build it and build value, if you want to keep it just as I use this term lifestyle affectionately, not because everyone wants to be, but if you want to be a small boutique agency and not scale, then what's really important about not spending all your drawings each month and saving for a rainy day? Because, I saw it with my own parents where they both retired from their businesses with no savings with a business they couldn't sell. And Pete and I often get calls from 50, 60-year-old creatives going, I've spent the last 20 years running an amazing creative agency. I've got 5 staff, but actually I need to sell it now because I've got no money. And you're like, well, haven't you been saving for like the last 20 years? And they're like, no, I've been living off it. Oh, okay. So, but sitting down, first of all, I do think, advise, I urge you to do that, to, sit down and definitely think about the numbers, now you've done your accountancy degree, you're great. So, look at that, how that would look and why you're doing what you do. And then it's actually quite important to forget about the numbers actually and go, well, I know what I'm doing. I'm going, yes, have a budget. And if you're using Xero, which hopefully most people are these days, it's very easy to put a budget, isn't it, Pete, into Xero and set yourself some targets. And, and maybe just look at the finances once a week for an hour. I don't think it needs to be more, does it, Pete, really, Really? No. I mean, you kind of, if you're good at budgeting and you've got, someone, doing this kind of bookkeeping once a week, you just kind of just checking, kind of glancing over the shoulder. Where have we been? Are we still on track for where we're going? So you shouldn't, and as Spencer said, Xero, fantastic product. I think you have a secret weapon as well, because the fact that you have this, ability to be able to speak and, go out and talk, and you do a lot of talks, I know, and share your story and your journey. And, that's one of the best ways to find. I mean, we just did a global survey of how agencies win business. And you said, understand where business comes from. Well, let me tell you now, some of the biggest clients in the world in most agencies have come, from one of 3 ways, which is an existing client recommendation, an existing client leaving their job and going somewhere else, or you being at a speaking event and speaking, and someone in the audience goes, actually, I really want to work with you. And beyond speaking, the networks and connections that you build. So really, I think you're in a great position to leverage those skills, to go and grow a business and hit some sales numbers. So I do wish you all the best of luck with the new beginning.
Thank you. I need to learn to do that, though. I think, like I said, I've just been with the other one. I just sort of plodded along. That was it. It was just, it was ticking along. I never really thought about the growth. So, like you said about, did you realize you were an agency? I think all that time, I didn't realize I was an agency.
Yeah.
I was just,
it's funny, and I don't know if you remember when you read the book. It's like we wrote in there, and it's funny because I'd never thought about this either. What is an agency? Because a lot of people go, well, what is an agency? Because an agency is a business that an organization or a brand can outsource work to do because they can't do it themselves, because they don't have the knowledge, the resource, or the time maybe to complete it. So an agency is an organization that supports another company to fulfill a task. And in some cases, the organizational brand, and very much so these days when it comes to maybe things like social media or digital marketing, they can do it in-house. They don't need to go out to an agency because they do it in-house. But there are always certain things that companies can't do. Like, they're not really going to bring branding in-house, because actually branding is something you maybe do in your business, you maybe rethink about once every 2 to 3 years. So it would be pointless having a branding expert in your business, in most companies, by the way. For some very large ones it would make more sense because they're always inventing new products and services, but also you want to get fresh ideas in, you want to get fresh perspective. And so I think once you understand what an agency is and you understand what the needs of organizations are, then it does get a lot easier. But the thing I would say, just to add, because this has come up a lot this week and we've had a lot of fun talking about it, is having accountability partners, like people who hold you to account. And we had yesterday, we in our podcast yesterday on episode 20, we talked to Susanna Simpson, and it's interesting to talk to her because she's always had this kind of like quite close friendship group, and almost an accountability group as well, where everyone holds each other to account, and that can be quite useful to keep you on track, especially when you are probably, I'm going to say not like you, but like me, where you've got a million ideas and a million things, and you've just got to, rein it in and focus on one or two things and make them work well.
I've just started doing that
Have you?
with another Agencynomics member.
Oh, have you? Amazing.
Yeah.
See, that's well, there you go. So that's music to our ears, isn't it, Pete?
Yeah, brilliant.
It's been amazing. And actually, like you said, that sort of thing reining in, because I would have like a massive to-do list, then I'd give her 5 things I definitely needed to do that day. And actually, I'd be like, well, I'm told I'm going to do this now. I kind of have to.
I love that.
So it's been really good. I think it's helped.
You know what? I think we might set up a group in our community now for find an accountability partner, someone to hold you to account, because that would be a really great idea.
It's also really important that you have someone who's got similar sort of goals to you as well, and similar sort of ways of doing it, because you don't want someone who's, really like hard tasking and then, quite, really anal about stuff, because then they might make you feel bad or whatever. So you need to have someone.
I've got one last question for you. Because I think we've just gone over the hour mark now. Not that really time's an issue, but I know you haven't been feeling too well, and you put on a very brave face to do this today. So when all the things went wrong, and you've obviously had some pretty dark times. You must have had a lot of legals over your team, taking all your clients away. How have you dealt with? How have you dealt with it? How have you been resilient? I mean, people talk about resilience, but it strikes me with all of the challenges you've had, you must have had to dig deep at times. What have you got any advice or tips on being more resilient, or have you just not coped at all? I don't know. Like how do you to cope with it all?
I've drank a lot of alcohol.
Yeah, I found myself doing that a lot during lockdown as well. Too much. Yeah.
I actually had an actual full-on bar in my office. People used to come there just for a drink. It was like every type of alcohol was stocked. It was always fully stocked, just in case I had a stressful day. But if you value your liver, that's not a good plan. So I think for me, it has been about having people around me. So I don't think I could have done it without supportive people. Yeah. And it's weird because I think you need a balance of people who are agency people and non-agency people. Yeah. Because before Agencynomics, I didn't have anyone I could talk to who was in the agency world. And I think that's one of the hardest things I found, is that being a solo founder is totally different. And that's why I've spoken to other solo founders and people who are who are agency owners but have got partners. They don't get what solo founders go through, because every time you have a problem, you have to decide, you have to do it yourself. You have to find a solution yourself. You don't have anyone to talk to about it. All the financial burden is all on you. Like, it's very difficult to make those high level decisions every single day all by yourself. So I found that really difficult, and to talking to people who are kind of not in the agency world, who have a different perspective, who just kind of come clean to the position, that's really useful. But at the same time, it's been fantastic ever since I joined Agencynomics, because there's suddenly all these people who totally get what I go through on a daily basis. Yeah. And can be like, well, actually, this happened to me. I can do this. And you're suddenly like, oh my God, I'm not alone. I'm not the only one going through all these problems. And it's fantastic. And so I think you need a balance though, because I think for me, it's definitely having those people around me to know that other people are going through it. There is a solution out there. There is at the end of that tunnel, because like you said, you come to a point where you just feel like giving up. And for me, the reason why I started again was because I got to the point where I actually hated my job. I've never, ever had that in my life. The reason why I wanted to do my own thing is because I absolutely love what I do. I got to that point in 2019 where I actually hated my job. That was just, I couldn't believe it. So I had to stop. I took a week off and went on holiday and just reset, and then came back fresh. And then obviously made that decision by the end of the year to start again. But I think that it's really important that you kind of look at things from objective point of view, which is really, really difficult to do if you're involved in the business all the time. So I think having trusted people, like you're saying, like you guys go into so many different businesses and help them out. That's because you guys have got years of experience. They trust you, and you're outside from the day-to-day activities. And I think that's so important. Yeah. Having people you trust is huge, and it's more important And I think, that's
Yeah, no, you are so right. And in that solopreneur thing, really, actually, weird has been a massive topic this week. And Pete and I have certainly, we've had situations in the last couple of weeks where, we've had people ringing us up, solopreneurs, really struggling with lockdown, running big businesses, and hitting breaking points, and us being there for them because they kind of need someone to talk to just to sort them down off the cliff, not literally off the cliff, but just because just get a breaking point. And so, but I do accept what you say as well. I'm probably the first to say, making sure you've got a balance of connections. Like, don't spend all your life with other agency people, because it's important to get things in perspective. But also the fact you went on holiday, I think too many people running businesses don't value the holidays. They think it's more stressful to go away because they've got to leave the business, but it's so important to get the rest, isn't it?
And I used to think that. I used to be like, well, I can't afford to take time off, because every time I take time off, I come back and it's like it's piled up a lot more.
Yeah.
And actually, it's more stressful. But actually, what I've realised over the last few weeks as well, I've taken the weekends off, and talking to my accountability partner, I was saying, actually, I've been really productive. Every time I've taken a whole weekend off and done nothing, Monday morning, I'm like so productive, because I'm refreshed and reset. But also, it's like, well, actually, I've done nothing all weekend. I've got to work. So then I work really, really hard during the week. I'm super productive, because then I know I can afford to take the weekend off because I've done all that. And I think it actually helps. It's a good work-life balance doing that.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, well, listen, it's been wonderful speaking to you. I think the more we've spoken today, just the more interesting and fascinating the conversations got, as well as we've got deeper into things. And I always find that with Agencynomics, like, everyone's got to sort of stick with the whole show, because actually the real nuggets and gems always come out as we start talking more and more. But we have run out of time for today's episode. So thank you so much for. I know you're not only you're disappointed with the football score from last night, but you had to drag yourself out of bed not well. So I really appreciate that, and both of us wish you all the best for the future.
Thanks for having me on. It's been an honor.
No worries. Have a lovely weekend.
You too.
So just to conclude, a few things I've learned today on the show. First of all, in our community, I'm absolutely going to try and create this kind of accountability service where people can maybe hold each other. I'm going to steal it from you, Sabrina, because I think if I can create more of those kind of connections, I think it'd be really valuable. And also maybe even set up a group for the people who are the solopreneurs as well, who are running by themselves without business partners, because I do think having that support group is really, really important. And it's just a reminder, really, that talking to you today, that in agencies, everyone has challenges, whether it be weekly, monthly, or one a year. I had a client last year that had 3 major challenges come in 1 year, and they're reasonably big clients. So it does happen, and it's just a reminder to all of us that we just got to make sure that we learn lessons every time it happens. And finally, really, that we should always judge failure as a positive thing, as something that we should, as long as we learn lessons from it, and we shouldn't be afraid sometimes to admit defeat and start again. And but as long as we take those lessons and we channel them in the right way. So I hope you've enjoyed the episode. And I've got to learn to ask the questions back to front this time, maybe. I don't know, work it round, but I hope you stay with us. And thanks to always to Wirehive, lastly, for helping to produce the show and create it. The show couldn't happen without Wirehive. So if you don't know who they are, please go and check them out. And if you get an opportunity to work with them, please do so, because we do all of this for free, and it just helps me justify the fact that they're donating loads of their staff and resources and studio and technology to help us make this show happen. So hope everyone has a lovely weekend, and we'll speak